Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Eggwars. I'm so glad to see you. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for tuning in. I apologize that I did not put out an Eggwars yesterday, because I recorded an Eggwars yesterday, but I was very pissed off about a lot of random, unimportant things yesterday, which caused me to have a Spurg Rage meltdown in the middle of filming yesterday's Eggwars. So I have the raw video still, I have the raw audio still. Maybe someday if I really can't upload, maybe I'll chop off the rage and just upload like a half Eggwars. We'll see what happens, but it wasn't really that great anyway. But on account of that, gosh, golly gee whiz, I ran out of sips. I know. I have a 24-pack of sips coming in the mail tomorrow, but gosh, what am I going to do for today? Well, I guess all I have to drink is this shot of bourbon, so when you gotta make do sometimes with what's around for a little beverage, you know. I don't think I'll need to chase a single shot of bourbon, but I am kind of a pussy little weak-ass bitch, so let's find out. Cheers, my friends. Well, it's not that I need to chase it, I certainly want to do an Egg Wars with bourbon on my tongue the whole time. Just a little palate cleanser. Alright. So, shout out to everybody. Shout out to my three amigos, Arto, producer Chris, and Jack Hinoff in the description, as always. I'll just spit on my camera. Now, today, our main story today is going to be revisiting a topic that I have discussed in the past. But once again, it's a topic that I'm okay with revisiting and expanding upon from an Ask Eggy video that we did in the past, and it's been discussed on streams a couple of times as well. But that topic is the tragic situation of my house burning down and everything that came with that. But first, a foreword before we descend into this topic of it's a deep topic, and that foreword is, you know, these chicks who wear these Japanese style clothes. Oh, man. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of that stuff. Honestly, like, I know these chicks, they go on these websites and they order these mystery bundles of, like, all these, like, they call it, like, Lolita fashion from Japan, and it's not, like, weird like you might, well, it's, like, it's weird in a way that you might not expect. Like, when I heard Lolita fashion, I'm like, that just sounds creepy. That sounds like, that sounds like some weird shit that, like, 70-year-old men who wear lipstick and kiss themselves in the mirror are gonna be looking to buy, you know? But it's actually, it's like these big fluffy dresses and these hats and all this different stuff. But the chicks who buy this stuff, and they're on YouTube and they do their hauls and their unboxings or whatever, they're like the most autistic females. Like, I know people say, well, you can't tell, it's hard to diagnose autism in women. It's really hard to diagnose autism in women because it's so much more obvious in men. Women are naturally shy or naturally reclusive or not whatever, But no, you can tell. I'm here to do your research for you, doctor. Go on to your fucking YouTube.com page and Google Lolita fashion, and find these girls who want to pretend they live in anime. Like, you have the guys who, if you want to say like an autistic guy is like obsessed with anime and like, buys Figmas or buys a Daki or whatever, which I don't think that means the guy's autistic, I mean, there's nothing wrong with buying some Dakis. I mean, I own some Dakis and I'm, well, okay, a bad example. But these chicks are so autistic. And I don't know, it's like, it's something weird. It's something weird in my brain. Maybe it's like an evolutionary response to like stay away. Is this what a normal woman feels like when she sees like a very autistic man? I don't know, because I'm not really a normal guy. But these chicks, man, they're kooky. They're cuckoo bananas, and it's wild. It's wild. So I'm making my peace with that. I don't like girls who are into that stuff. It's weird. And I'm a weird guy, but there's something weird about that. I don't know. Did I mention, by the way, we got the Josh shirt on today? Shout out to my boy Josh. He's keeping it real, 10 toes down, 110% buck all the time. Yeah, boy. Yeah. All right, but yes, today we're going to be revisiting that painful topic, which some people still to this day, they think that I fabricated this, but I did post on Twitter at some point in the last couple months. I went through a news archive of sorts, and I found the article that was discussing this situation, but I will tell you all about it now. So the year was 2010, and I was a senior. I was going to my opportunity school. And it was January of 2010. It was any day like any other day. Just same thing. Whenever you have something in life that happens that's super shitty, that something horrible's about to happen, it just starts off like any other day. So I went to school, and the thing about the opportunity school was, if you weren't, you could be on like probation. If you were doing like not very good, you could be like on probation there, where you'd be held to more rigorous standards and more rigorous supervision. Kind of the same way like in real life, having to go to your PO. But if you weren't, you had the option of, if you were doing well enough and you were on track to graduate on time, you could actually leave at 12:30 p.m. in the day. Like, the classes would run until like 2:30 p.m., but if you were on track and you didn't necessarily need to stay, you could actually leave at 12:30. You could have your lunch and then go home. And if you know about me, I was not doing that well, but at the same time, I wasn't on the probation either, so I still had the option. So of course, I hated school. I was like, yeah, I'm trying to go home anytime. But another thing was that the school buses did not service the opportunity school, because it wasn't actually, it was considered more of like a disciplinary program than like than a school building. So the school buses did not service this, but the city buses did. So you had to go, if you wanted to leave. The problem is that the buses would come about every hour, and the bus would get there like 5 minutes before lunch, like before, basically people were okay to go. So if you wanted to get out and get on the city bus and go home, like right when you could, you basically had to keep your fingers crossed that the bus was going to be running about 5-10 minutes late. Otherwise, you were going to have to wait, a whole other hour and some change. And then, by then you're like, oh, I'm only leaving like 40 minutes early by now. What's the point? And plus, if you could get a ride when school let out, like, you almost would be getting home later. So it was kind of a clusterfuck. But this particular day, that time came around, and I was like, well, I can't remember if this was already in place or not, strangely enough. I really don't recall. But whatever the case was, my grandfather came to pick me up at this 12:30 marker, so I didn't have to worry about the bus. I was like, oh, I can just have my lunch, and I'm going to leave. Cool, awesome, that's great, that works out. So he picked me up on this day, and he basically was like, oh, Mills, I got some bad news. And I was like, oh, and I was like, yeah, your mom, she had been she'd been off of work this day, but she had basically got up in the morning and went to run some errands. And while she was running errands, there was a wiring issue. There was in our laundry room, the wiring of the dryer had gone haywire and had essentially sparked and caught fire. And of course, being a laundry room, there was a lot of, there was like dryer sheets and, a lot of, flammable materials. And so basically the dryer room had gone up in flames. The neighbors saw smoke, kind of starting to shoot out the window. Even though it was shut, it was like, whatever, it was finding ways out. And they called the police and the fire department, and they went and put out this fire that was up there. But essentially, like the upper half of the house had, the laundry room was totally screwed, and upstairs, which is where my bedroom was, had suffered a lot of damage. And so it's like, oh shit, I'm like, I don't even know how to take this. I'm like, holy shit, that's horrible. I think, I was very concerned. I mean, how do you take this, especially with like, my room with my clothes and everything? It's kind of just like, And they're like, oh, well, it wasn't, like, your room didn't catch fire, but there was smoke, so there was smoke damage to things maybe. And so I'm like, okay, I'm concerned. I'm not really sure how to take it. I'm kind of sweating a little bit, but they're like, we're gonna have, we're having people go in and kind of going upstairs and, they're taking some stuff and moving some stuff around and they're kind of assessing the damage. So I'm like, I guess it happened, and and we're distraught, but I guess we're gonna hope for the best. We're gonna hope that there wasn't a whole lot of damage. We're gonna hope that things were kind of handled, and maybe just have to buy some new clothes, just because I had some souvenirs, some memoirs, some memorabilia from my family, and all different kinds of things. It's your house. You're gonna have all your stuff. If you it's especially at my age like that. It's not like I had my own place with all that I brought my stuff to. So that day, my grandfather, we went and stayed with him at his house, and we're like, well, we're gonna stay here. We're gonna sleep the night. We're gonna go back and just kind of we might be staying here for a few days while we get this damage assessed, and kind of see what's the thing is. We might have to, I might have to sleep downstairs at the house for a little while. We'll see what happens. And so we go there and we stay at my grandfather's that night. And that night, the fire rekindles in the upstairs of the house. It rekindles in the middle of the night while we were asleep. And then after that, because it's the middle of the night, nobody's awake, nobody knows, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, nobody calls the fire department until they see the entire house is up in flames, because they couldn't, nobody's gonna be looking for smoke to be coming out of it in the pitch black night, especially in the winter. There's like total pitch black, freezing night. Nobody's gonna be sitting up staring at it. So the fire rekindles in the middle of the night, and the house burns. Some people have said, some people have seen the pictures, they're like, it didn't burn to the ground, but essentially, it was like, it was totally, the whole inside of the house was just like ash. There was some of the shell of the house was sort of remaining. It wasn't like totally, smoldering on the ground, when somebody finally noticed, but it was a total loss. Essentially, the fire department went in and they were trying to, there was a certain amount of things that were able to be salvaged from like the downstairs level. So fortunately we were able to save some of our family photos, and a couple other items. But otherwise, it was a total loss. Everything was gone. This was the house that I had lived the vast majority of my life in. When I was very young, I lived with my grandparents. I think I lived with my mother in a trailer at one point. But it was mostly between my grandparents that we lived back and forth. So then, this was like the first place that I'd lived, it was in Minnesota. When I was originally, I was born in Minnesota. That's totally, I was born in Minnesota, but my family has always been from Wisconsin, and I grew up those first few years living in Wisconsin because of that. But this was a house in Minnesota, and that was where I lived, up my whole life up to that point. And it was just like that. Everything was gone. All my clothes, except for the ones on my back, were all gone. All my childhood items, everything I had growing up as a kid, all the stuff I had was gone. My computer was gone. Just everything was gone, just like that. And it was a lot to take, but it was very interesting to me because, my stance on it initially was one of, oh, that's horrible. I was very upset and very distraught, but it didn't take, I don't know, for me personally, it didn't take a lot of time to think to myself, well, what? Really the important part was that the family, all of us were okay. None of us were severely injured by this fire. Nobody lost their life, because that would be something irreplaceable. Anything material is replaceable, but life is very precious, and our pets were all able to be, all of our pets were taken with us to my grandfather's after that first day. So they were all fine. They were all okay. And so it was a very interesting feeling, to just, to wake up one day and you don't have anything. Like, just imagine, I guess, it was such a surreal feeling to just all of a sudden have nothing, but what you have on you, So because of that, well, we were living with our grandfather, and it was like, well, a few days to a week to however long turned into, it's just gonna we have to live with you until we have a new home. And so it was actually quite interesting because my parents, my father, is very, very intelligent. He's a very good, very handy person, and so he really didn't waste any time. He's like, well, we're going to have to rebuild. So this was in January of 2010, and he started the reconstruction efforts, and got everything situated, hired that needed to be hired, and all that different stuff. He got everything in place that needed to be in place, and he started rebuilding, pretty much as soon as possible. And the house, we actually ended up moving back in to that house, the new house, then in July of 2010. So really, pretty much a 6-month period to totally rebuild the entire house. It was quite something else, definitely. But it was very interesting because I don't know. Living with my grandfather was an interesting thing because I had spent a lot of time at his house as a child, and this was a house that he had he had purchased this house in like the early 2000s, and it was a large house, and this was the house when I was younger that I would go and bring in the basement, and I believe the stuff was still there actually when we moved in to live with him, but I mentioned this in the gamer episode, the NES, the Genesis, like this stuff was still in his basement when I was down there. We had like an old analog television, I think, is that the right word, with like the antennas on it that we would game on. It was with the RF modulator, so it was really interesting to all of a sudden be living in that place that I'd sort of, as a younger child, a young teen, I kind of spent my time hanging out at. And also he has never had internet. He's had dial-up internet, but like he never, all he would ever use his internet for would be to check his email. So he never had, and this was a time when I was playing World of Warcraft, so I essentially had to, I was kind of forced in a way to stop playing as much as I wanted to because, it was essentially impossible to play on a dial-up speed. But there was a guy, though, that I did go to school with that I was able to, because this was the time, when I was in the opportunity school, as I've mentioned before, this is like when I had a bit of a social circle going on, so I was able to hang out with some people and, like, play World of Warcraft at their houses on their internet sometimes to try to kind of catch up with a couple things, but I guess it kind of just goes to show where my mindset was at the time, that, that was still something I was concerned about to want to go and, make sure I was getting my arena battles in and whatever, But, that did wane as time went on, because I ended up quitting WoW in 2011, so it kind of waned a little bit more as time went on that year. You just kind of feel, you get in a position, which is something I've come to feel a couple different times, where, you get to really feel what really matters in life. You kind of get to feel that, like, the digital things aren't really all that, I might have vested a lot of time in that, but at the end of the day, it can all be taken from you, so, count your blessings and, appreciate everything around you, physical, digital, whatever. So, it was a little tense because, living with my grandfather, because I was not the best kid. Like I mentioned before, I wasn't a very good student. I was kind of just an abrasive, could be lazy sometimes, could be irresponsible sometimes, and he was not afraid to be, to kind of get on my ass about it, where sometimes with my parents, they, I don't want to make myself sound too bad here, but, my parents would kind of just be like, oh yeah, I'll do that, and they'll be like, okay. Whereas my grandfather, I'm like, okay, I'll do that, and he was like, do it. Just do it. I'm like, okay. And then I can't remember, this is another good cringy story, actually, I'm going to work in here. because I don't know if I've told this one before, but when I was living with my grandfather, there was a chick who I had a crush on in high school, and I was like, oh, this is a good opportunity in a way. Almost, I'm gonna try and make something good out of something bad. And it was actually May of 2010, so we'd already been living with my grandfather for a minute. And I was like, well, I like this chick, and I kind of have a crush on her. And if I was living at my house, I wouldn't want to invite her over because I lived in absolute filth, and I never cleaned my room, and I had garbage piled up, which also I'm sure was not very good. I had this like wall of Mountain Dew 12-pack boxes that I had because I was like, oh, I'm a gamer. I had my Game Fuel boxes piled up because I thought that was so cool. It was like trophies, because I didn't have a lot of money growing up, so it was like I would drink my Mountain Dew and then have the 12-pack box left over. I'd be like, oh, cool. I could afford, 20 12-packs of Mountain Dew. Yeah, I'm so cool. So anyway, so it's May of 2010, and there's this chick. She's a nerdy gamer girl. She was a quarter black, but she looked totally white, but she had the black tits, which I mean she was busting out the wrappers, so to speak. And she was just kind of a hipster chick at the same time. So I was like all these different combinations. I'm like, ooh, interesting. I'm interested. I'm gonna invite this chick over and whatever. So I invite this chick over to my grandpa's house. Her dad drops her off, and we're chilling there. It's a pretty nice house. I'm feeling like a good host. We're chilling there, or whatever. And I can't remember, she was going to look something up on Facebook, and she types in Facebook, like, into the address bar, and my history is, like, all her page, because I was, like, fucking checking out her page because of her big tits. So, like, she pulls it up, and it's, like, all her page, and she was like, oh my goodness, are you, like, stalking my Facebook? And I'm like, oh, no, that's just my most recent, or whatever. And she, like, actually goes into my history and fucking, like, looks at how I was, like, looking at, like, every single one of her pictures, and I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, she was somewhat tech savvy enough to do that, and she was like, oh my goodness. And then she wanted to vibe out to some music, so she, like, pulls up some fucking YouTube and starts, like, pulling up some music. And of course, I can't remember, I was doing some like, rap I was on at the time. Chicks always dig that when I pull up some rap, because I think I'm a total dweeb, and I don't know anything about rap, and I know people don't like rap, but it's just something that I've noticed over the years that chicks find to be, like, comical and novel with me. So I kind of busted out some funky, fresh rhymes, and then she ruined a song for me, REM, "Losing My Religion," because that was like she made us listen to it like 10 times, and so like for the longest time, every time I would listen to this song, I would just think of this cringy time that I was hanging out with this chick, and it wasn't very pleasant. And then my brother had an Xbox 360. I never was much playing for 360, but he had an Xbox 360 and he had Call of Duty, and she was like, oh, are you a gamer? And I'm like, yeah, but I don't play console FPS. I play PC FPS, but can't do that right now because all we have is this one little laptop that we have that, in this time of distress. But then she was like, oh, well, if you're a real gamer, then you can do a better KPD than me on Call of Duty. And so she plays Call of Duty, and she's doing pretty all right. And I'm like, well, it doesn't look that hard. I'm like, okay, well, if you can do it, I can do it. And so I go on to Call of Duty then in front of this chick sitting next to me, and I just get blown the fuck out. I get totally destroyed, totally wrecked. I do garbage, and she just laughs at me the whole time. She's like, oh my god, you're so bad at games. And you would think this would be kind of like, ha ha ha, a little bit of laughter, a little bit of charming things going on here, but no, they kind of, by the end of it, she was just like, wow, you're kind of a loser, and you kind of suck, and you're kind of stupid. And then she just ended up leaving, and she was never really keen on talking to me again, which really, honestly, that shit should have been able to fall into my lap. She was so try hard with like, oh, I know memes, oh, I know video games, haha, and she was like trying to like always talk about how, oh, I browse 4chan sometimes, so it's really no surprise she ended up being a total whore. She was probably a fucking cam whore at some point. She would turn out to be a total slut, absolutely sickening piece of human garbage. But hey, that's pretty much all women that I'm attracted to at some point, so hey, what are you gonna do, I guess? So anyways, there was a couple fun incidents that happened at this time while I'm staying with my grandfather, but in July then of 2010, we get to there was just like a couple things. Like the house was pretty much move-in ready, but there was a couple things that were going on. But we had postponed my graduation party until like the end of July, just to make sure this is like when we think we're gonna have the house finished. So okay, we're gonna say the end of July for the graduation party, and thankfully we ended up like a week before the graduation party. We were moved in, we were getting everything together, and it was all good. And so then my graduation party, July 22nd, 2010, if I recall accurately, it was wild. It was a good time, because I invited everybody that I knew from the opportunity school. So for that reason, people actually showed up, because this was a point in my life where I had some social circle. And so that was really cool, because if it had been like any other point, if I had like my junior year social life in my senior year, nobody would have showed up. Like nobody would have showed up, and I wouldn't have as good of memories as I do of this maybe. But so for my senior, it was a lot of family and friends of the family, but there was like a solid number of people who I knew that were not related to me who showed up, and we got crunk, because there was some people who I knew that were a little bit older, because, with the graduation, or the opportunity school, you could, like, be there if you were there until you were 21, you could keep on being there forever, but at 21, that was, like, the last year that the taxpayers would have to cover your education. Then you would have, if you were 22 in an opportunity school, you'd have to pay your own way. But because of this, I knew people that were there that were 21 in high school still. And so there was some people who showed up that were a little bit older, and they were kind of just chilling, and, we're having a good time, but we got fucking crunk. Like, we had bottles of liquor and beers and a lot of food, and it was just a great time. Like, we had a trampoline in the backyard. My neighbor, he got wasted, and he was bouncing up on the trampoline doing backflips and kickflips and somersaults and all this shit. He fell off the trampoline, he just did some wild trick, and he just like goes off, and he fucking goes and lands in the yard. Thankfully didn't hit the patio or anything, but he landed in the yard, and thankfully he was okay. But, there was a lot of food going on. People were up until like 5 o'clock in the morning, people from my age to, boomers in their 60s, people just getting hammered and eating a lot of food, and that's just how we do it where I'm from, baby. That's that country style, we just, we party hard. Yeah, buddy, yeah. So, we all fell asleep. Everybody that was, like, who I knew, we all fell asleep in, like, this entryway room with this futon. Like, there was, a guy and a chick fell asleep on this futon together, and, like, everybody else just, like, laying around on the floor, couches, whatever. I was sad, though, because there was this chick who I think I might have mentioned before, but who I actually went to school with, even though she was older than me, but I went to school with this chick, and she was kind of greasy and kind of disgusting, and she had been on meth and heroin and all this stuff in the past, so she was kind of just a greasy chick and fat and just really not a very attractive person by anyone's standards, but she had big, fat bazoongas, big old fat jumbons, big milkers, and so because of that, I was attracted to her, and I remember she came at some point, like, earlier in the day, and I had a couple drinks, and I fucking, like, straddled on her back and started giving her a back rub. And she was like, Mills, this is, like, super creepy. Isn't this, like, super creepy? And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not. It's good. It's cool. And I was still a virgin at this point, but I didn't give a fuck. I was like, no, babe, this is the ticket right here. This is that good shit, just sit back, chill, babe, take a deep breath. And then she was like, okay, I think I'm gonna want you to, like, stop doing that. And she didn't stay the night, but I still had fantasies. Like, as I was laying there drunk, I was like, man, it'd be super cool if she came back in and just fucking sucked my dick right now, dude. That'd be so cool. Didn't happen, and thankfully, probably for the best that it never did, because she did this thing that all these chicks do, where she, like, all of a sudden she went from, like, ex-drug addict and kind of skanky to all of a sudden she was like, she found the right guy, and she just, like, suddenly became super chaste and super, oh my goodness, I would never do that, No offense to her, I don't think she even probably remembers who I even am anymore, but I just always found that to be kind of interesting. Oh, let's see here. What else? What else was of this situation? Well, we, I got to be in the newspaper again. If you don't know about me, I've been in the newspaper, in my local paper, front page multiple times, and then otherwise, I think I've been front page of my paper like 3 times, And otherwise, on top of that, I've been included somewhere in the paper with a photograph a couple times. And then also, there was that time I got arrested. That was, no photograph then. But this was another time I was in the newspaper. I guess I'll just tell you why. The 3 times I was front page of the newspaper was actually when I was an infant. My mother and her friends were on the front page of our local paper working at a mall or something, and she had me in her arms. So there was the infant me. Then when I was young, I was on the front page of the newspaper for a poetry. I read a poem at a little child's art festival thing. That got me front page. And then my magnum opus as an 8th grade junior high student, I got full front page, full color, because the other ones were black and white, but this was the full color spread of when I won the local junior high spelling bee that year. Yeah, I got the full front page color spread for that, which I think my grandfather still has a copy of that somewhere. The other ones I've seen them in my life growing up at some points, but I don't know if people have them on hand anymore. It'd be cool if they did, but this time I was can't remember if it was like the what do you call it, the VFW or something. I don't know if that's right, but whoever it was, some organization. Oh no, it was Kiwanis. I think it was Kiwanis. They got some donation for me to go and pick out 3 different outfits from Walmart or something like that. Since I had no clothes, all I had was the clothes on my back. I had nothing to wear. I was, it was, for the first couple weeks, it was wear the same shit, at night, sleep naked and have mom, wash my outfit and then put it back on again, So that was nice for those, for that to happen. They took a picture with us getting our new clothes and stuff. So that was pretty cool so I got a shout out. I should go and donate to that charity sometime. I think it was Kiwanis if I ever get to be in a better standing, in this world. But, that was pretty much it, I just kind of had to learn to keep moving on without the stuff from my childhood, everything, I don't have a lot of, things might be different these days, if I had some cool stuff I could bring up these days to show you guys that I have some stuff from my childhood that I grew up with, but it's all just kind of in the memory banks now, and I gotta keep the oral tradition going of what I can, and hopefully I'm doing a decent job of that by putting hours upon hundreds of hours of my life on video. That maybe people can get some kind of idea of who I am or who I was in the future if I'm not able to transmit it in any more other meaningful way. I also want to say the new video I put out yesterday, the Relax song, I think at this point it is gosh darn near doing the best ratio that I've ever had, maybe, which really takes me by surprise because I was not expecting that. Yeah, right here we're at 98 likes and 1 dislike on 461 views. I think that might be, because usually the best videos I've ever uploaded they'll do essentially 1 view to 5 likes, and right now, I think it's doing a little bit better than that even. So shout out to everybody that's been watching my couple, fever dream psycho videos and enjoying them. I appreciate the support. I'm trying to think, is there anything else? Was there any other, let me sip a little water here for a moment. I think that I pretty much covered the whole spectrum of that story. But, hopefully that'll be the only time in my life that I ever have to deal with some shit like that, because, I try not to ground myself to anything material, but it's still very, right now, I still have a lot of my stuff from the last few years. I have the cuckening letters somewhere in my immediate range of finding. I have my stuff from Fan Expo when I was in Toronto. I still have some of my ex-girlfriend's clothes, unfortunately. They've just been sitting around collecting dust because I don't have anything to do with them. I'm maybe I'll donate them to Goodwill or something at some point, but, There's some memories in this stuff, It's not that, I get obsessed with material goods, but there's memories behind that stuff, But that was 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago now, for God's sake. I'm getting so old. But we move on. We take the losses. We get through it, and we keep powering on, and we keep doing what we can in our lives to live our best life, and we're going to keep on pushing forward towards our dreams, my friends, no matter what. We're going to be the best people we can be. We're going to keep on pushing forward. If we can visualize our success, I believe we can achieve that success. Unless you're trying to get like 100 bitches, then you better maybe start doing roids or something. But otherwise, I think we can maybe do it. But as far as that goes, my friends, thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of Eggwars. Glad you could make it. And thank you for listening to another one of my stories. And we will see you next time.
Sounds from the void.